Hello dear students, welcome to Chemistry Bench. So today we are going to learn about ionic bonding and covalent bonding in just 10 minutes. So let's get started. So before we start, we should understand what holds the atoms together. You know that atoms, they have electrons in the energy shells around the nucleus. So the atoms, in order to form bonds, they do gain, lose or share electrons, so that in the process they achieve the valence shell of 8 electrons. When they acquire the valence shell of 8 electrons, they become isoelectronic with a noble gas. And this rule is called as octet rule. So when the atoms observe the octet rule, so they become stable like the noble gas, having 8 electrons in the valence shell. So before we proceed, let's have an idea about ionic bond and covalent bond. So firstly, ionic bond is a bond formed between a positive charged ion called the cation or the negative charged ion called the anion. So for example, sodium Na plus is a cation and Cl minus is an anion. So how these ions are formed, we can understand by the transfer of electron from the cation to the anion. This kind of ions will be formed, and due to electrostatic forces of attraction, they form the ionic bond. We're talking about covalent bond. So covalent bond, also known as molecular bond, is the net attractive force that results from the sharing of electrons between atoms. So we'll be seeing some examples of covalent bond and ionic bond. So we know that sodium chloride is an ionic compound, and they have an ionic bond between sodium ion and chloride ion. So what we observe here is that sodium ion has 11 electrons. Being a neutral atom, it has 11 electrons, which can be arranged in the different energy shells, say KLM, as 2, 8, 1. So sodium, when loses one electron, it becomes sodium ion, which is having 10 electrons and a configuration of electronic configuration of 2, 8, in which it resembles neon atom, which is a noble gas, nearest noble gas to it, also having 10 electrons and a configuration of 2, 8. So we just observe that in the process of losing electron, sodium has 8 electrons in the valence shell or the outermost shell, and it becomes stable ion. Similarly, chlorine, which is having 17 electrons, tends to gain electron, which can be lost by sodium, and they become Cl minus. They become Cl minus ion, having 18 electrons, in which it resembles the nearest noble gas argon, which is also having 18 electrons and a configuration of 2, 8, 8 for the K, L and M shell. So we just observe that the octet rule is satisfied for each atom in the process of formation of the ions. And when the ions are formed, so the resultant ions are held together by the electrostatic attraction, forming a covalent bond. So this is another example in which magnesium, which is having 2 electrons in the outermost shell, is transferring 1 electron each to fluorine atom, which is having 7 electrons in the valence shell, so that in the process magnesium becomes Mg2 plus ion, having lost 2 electrons, and fluorine becomes fluoride ion with a -1 charge, having gained 1 electron each from the magnesium atom. And these oppositely charged ions do have Coulombic attraction or electrostatic attraction between them, forming the ionic bond in the process. So going ahead, let's also discuss about the covalent bond. So in covalent bond, as we just learned, that atoms, in order to acquire the octet, they do share electrons sometimes so that they become stable or become isoelectronic with the nearest noble gas. So here, this kind of sharing of atom mostly happens between non-metals. When two non-metals often share electrons, since they have similar attraction for the electrons. So this sharing of valence electron is called a covalent bond. So what we observe here in the process of formation of covalent bond is that the number of bonds formed is equal to the number of electrons shared between the atoms. Let's understand this with the help of some examples. So firstly, here we can see that hydrogen atom is having one electron each, and each of the hydrogen atom shares one electron each, so that one pair is shared and they form a covalent bond. And here in the process, there is a single bond getting formed between hydrogen and hydrogen because they have shared one pair of electrons. Let's go ahead and just look at some other examples. Just like hydrogen have formed single bond having shared one shared pair of electron. So there are some other examples here. So firstly, let's see the example of methane, CH4. Here carbon is having 4 valence electron and it is sharing one each with 4 hydrogen atom. So in the process, because it is sharing one electron each with the hydrogen atom, so there are 4 single bonds getting formed. And the second example, NF3, we can see that nitrogen has 5 valence electrons and nitrogen is sharing 1 electron each with fluorine atom, and fluorine is also sharing 1 electron each with nitrogen. So there are 3 single bonds getting formed between nitrogen and fluorine. Going ahead, so this is the Lewis electron dot structure, how we represent the sharing of electron using dots. So the bonding pair actually can be seen inside this. Yeah, and the lone pairs can be drawn on the atoms. So there are 6 atoms, 6 non-bonding or 3 lone pairs of electrons around fluorine atom. So an electron pair is either a bonding pair which forms a bond and it is the shared pair of electron between 2 atoms, or a lone pair which is an electron pair which is not shared, also can be called out as the non-bonding atoms. So as we just learned that if of one single pair of electron is shared between 2 atoms, it forms a single bond. Similarly, if 2 pairs of electrons are shared between the atoms, they form a double bond. So we can see this example of ethene. So we can see that both the carbon atoms, they are sharing 2 electrons each with each other, and because they are sharing 2 pairs of electrons, so it is double bond existing between both the carbon atoms. Not just this, the atoms can also share more than 2 electrons each. So here we can see the example of ethyne molecule. So here carbons, they are sharing 3 electrons each with each other. So triple bonds are getting formed. So elements that form triple bond would be small atoms like carbon, oxygen, nitrogen and sulfur. So triple bonds are also covalent bond in which 3 pairs of electrons are shared between the atoms. So this was about the ionic and the covalent bond. So we can also find some example. If you go through the books, you can find some more examples of incomplete octet. So some molecules, they do share, some atoms, they do share electrons, but they may not have a complete octet. So we'll learn more about this in our upcoming videos. Thank you.